Welcome to the Campus Outreach Staffcast, a podcast produced by CO staff for CO staff. I am your host, John Elam, and with me is the Campus Outreach Serve Executive Director, Kent Bailey. We are back for part 2 of our interview with Denny Catalano. In case you didn't catch part 1, check out the list of episodes in your podcast app to find part 1. Denny Catalano is the Regional Director of Campus Outreach Memphis in Memphis, Tennessee, under the authority of Second Presbyterian Church. Let's get back to the conversation.
Denny, if you and Michelle have been on a journey with her in graduate school towards counseling, and I know that that's an area that gets a lot of attention these days, and there's almost like, you can do campus ministry or you can do counseling or, mental health type things. Have there been things as you and Michelle have been walking that road together and perhaps that she's studying and you guys are talking about that have, from her studies and from what she's growing in and what she's doing, that have been informing campus ministry and where you've seen kind of like, here's some things good to learn and good for us to grow in? Anything like that you would want to comment on?
Man, that's a great question, Kent. I would say Michelle and I have had 2 very different experiences coming up within campus outreach, which allows us today to see, I think, campus outreach in its good and its bad. We've seen the power and potential of the laborer producing process, and we have seen the other side of people who just feel like they don't belong here because of X, Y, or Z. And that has absolutely shaped our ministry today. Michelle, I've said for a long time, she's got her PhD in wifeyhood and in parenthood. Yeah. She has an uncanny ability to understand me and understand each of our kids. It's unnatural. I think like it's supernatural. She is the wife of wives. She's the goat of wives. And I've always thought there's just a unique ability there to really understand someone, me in particular. I think the seminary for her has given her tools and language and a lot more and confidence as well. And it's fun. She goes to these classes, we'll come back, we'll download these thoughts together. And, it's pretty fun, the things that we've been learning these last couple of years. But maybe one thing that has maybe been an emphasis for me over the years because of our unique experiences is the question, how do I love everyone, but also help a lot of people grow and multiply in a few? And that's been challenging, if I'm honest. That's really challenging to have fruitful ministries that both raise up laborers and leaders at a high concentration of laborers and leaders, while also loving people so well that they see and smell and sense the aroma of Christ and his love for them within the ministry. I think more often than not, we see ministries that seem to be fruitful, a lot of laborers being raised up, but it comes with a lot of hurt and a lot of students' experience with the ministry. The ministry doesn't seem like a place where they can belong, don't necessarily feel loved and cared for by the people. Or you see ministries that care deeply for people, but they're not producing very effective laborers and leaders off the campus. I'm trying to learn what it looks like to see both, really want to see both, like that it would be said, like it was said of Jesus, that he had loved us during our ministry here on earth, and now he had loved us to the very end. I want my disciples to be able to say that. And I also want to see the nations reached through people who are called and passionate and zealous about spiritual things and walking by faith. And I do want to see both. And maybe you guys can help us, John, Kent. Maybe y'all have some thoughts. I don't know if it's just fresh for me to think. It's just I feel like I've been thinking about it for a while.
Man, that is really, really, really good. And I just want to encourage you guys continuing down that path, because as you all learn, it's going to help all of us learn and to grow. And so I'm just thankful for what Michelle's doing, what you're doing in that together. That's awesome. Thank you. And keep passing it on to us. That'll be awesome.
Well, let me know too, Kent. I want to know what you think.
Well, I think one of the things that you hit on there that I think is a temptation for us in ministry is to think that it's all up to me. It's what I do personally. And I think some of the things that you referenced there, that idea of loving everyone, engaging, encouraging, equipping a lot, but then really being able to develop at a deep level a few. I think one of those things about that is that's the church's calling. And when I say the church, I mean that inclusive of the campus outreach team as a part of the church. And so I know in that issue, I can really quickly go to, okay, it's all on me, versus, no, we're in this together. And this is the church that is doing this, and a part of the church being what campus outreach is doing. So that at least is one step for me that's helpful. So I wanted to go back to what you shared earlier, and I wanted you to go into it more because I've been so encouraged by it personally, is just the 5-year vision of the one family and the 150. And I'd love for you to give us a bit more in terms of detail on that, but I want to ask the question behind that. Why? What is it that led you as the regional leader to say, hey, this is something that we need to commit to, will help us if we commit to it? Kind of what was the why behind that made that such a critical step? It's a great step and be awesome for every region to have something like that. But how did you see that? And why did you call the whole ministry to that?
Yeah, I think the why was Matthew 9. I mean, I hate to restate the obvious, but the laborers being few. As I've been in this seat, I think I've been struck by how many phone calls and emails I receive from ministries, churches. I mean, and they're all asking for one thing. They're all asking for laborers. I started every time somebody would ask, hey, do you guys have anybody who can, I remember sitting down with the Memphis Grizzlies, and we had some students that were working for their nonprofit arm in the city. And I remember the director sitting across from him. Me and my buddy Chase were sitting across from him, and he was like, there's something about your people, man. They really care. Like, they really care about these students. Like, they will go out of their way to care. And right now we hired 5 of them. They're, doing this and that. He's like, how do we get more? And he's not even a Christian, but he's like, the people that you're putting out are just different. And I was like, well, and I got to tell him it's because of Jesus. Jesus makes a difference for us.
That's right.
He said, man, I need 20 more. And I said, well, I don't know if I can give you 20 more students. Look, at the end of the day, people, they keep asking for one thing, and it's laborers. And so I think that's just our unique stewardship with campus outreach. That's just the one thing we do. We don't do a lot. We're awful at a lot of things. It's kind of what you said, Kent. It's like there's a lot of good things that need to be engaged in across the church at large, but there's really only one thing we do, and it's that. It's building laborers. We just happen to do that one thing. We do it on the campus by God's grace, and we want to see the lost world impacted. So for me, it's the stewardship that we have to do this one thing. And most visionary thoughts that I'm not a natural visionary. Most visionary thoughts for me are just being around visionary people and sitting in the prayer closet. I mean, I feel like the prayer closet, I get more vision out of the prayer closet than any other place. Like, things that just stick for me usually happen there. I feel like I need vision for myself. Like, if I'm going to give my whole life to this, if I'm going to put my family into this, if we're going to do this, I need something that motivates me. And I just started asking the question, like, what's possible? Like, not what's been done before, not what do I expect people of me, but like, what is really what could God do if we really saw him move in a mighty way? And I just started taking inventory of our campuses and what's possible and what kind of where we were at as a region, what we needed as a staff team. And I feel like the Lord just gave that idea, and it just kind of stuck with me. And I feel like the things that the Lord impresses on my heart just kind of go through me and just kind of become a common, frequent, saying certain things around the ministry, and it just kind of caught and held. But I think that for us helped us to identify where we're going, the 3 classic questions: where are we going? Where are we at now? What's our next best step? So that's where we're going. We took a book called Traction, and we kind of scaled it back down from a 5-year vision to like a 3-year picture. And so our 3-year picture, we started this thing called Laborers Retreat. So we're going to do it every September. We're going to bring all of our laborers from all of our campuses in. We want to have 200 upperclassmen at our Laborers Retreat, 3 years. So that's the goal. 2027, we'll have 200 upperclassmen at our Laborers Retreat in September in Memphis. Kent, maybe you should come in and speak at that. Maybe that'll be a good
love to be there. Just love to be a fly on the wall. That'd be
great. So that's our 3-year picture, and then we've got our 1-year goals. So we just kind of scaled it back.
Denny, I've appreciated how you are always willing to ask questions, to look at the reality of what's happening, And I know you're observing a lot about what's happening in ministry today. And so I know at this juncture, fully formed answers may not be where we are, but I think you're observing some categories that we all ought to be thinking about, we ought to be observing in, we ought to be sharing what we're learning in, that would really speak into ministry today and as we go forward. Could you share some of those areas or categories that you're observing that we all ought to be keeping our eyes on?
Yeah, the categories for me that jump off the page are: there is a generational distinction for what students today are looking for, how they're wired, how they think differently, especially this expressive individualism piece. I've been fascinated by how relative the good life technically really is per individual. I remember sharing at a retreat, and I was talking about the good life. I was talking about, maybe you find your fulfillment and kind of went through the things that for me as a college student were the good life. And I remember this girl asked a question. She raised her hand and she goes, I think for your generation, maybe y'all were looking for fulfillment and happiness and peace out there, but our generation is looking for it in here. And she pointed to herself.
What an insight.
And I thought, you know what? It seems to me that the conversation has shifted from students looking for fulfillment out there and now looking in here. And so the shift is from the good life to my best life. It is from the good life, pursuing the good life, to pursuing my best life. And it is very individualized, takes a lot more time, takes a lot more question asking. I think there's that. I think the other category is the spiritual side of it. The idea of, all these students, in a sense, they are very spiritual people. And we know that in the scriptures. Obviously, there's a lot there, but there is a lot of spirituality taking place. I've been helped by Terra, Isabel, Burton, Strange Rites, thinking about some of those implications. I think the Coddling of the American Mind is another good one. Just shows how some of these thoughts kind of became realities in this generation. Gene Twang's got some great stuff on Gen Z, but I think the generational piece, the spiritual dimensions, those pieces come together. And then there's got to be something said about the social piece. The social piece is just different. The way that we engage students has got to evolve. It's got to change. I don't know necessarily how, but I know that these things flavor the way we evangelize, the way we disciple, the way we equip students to live out these principles for the rest of their lives. But it is a learning process for us. And I would just say, if anybody's listening to this, they've got good resources or things that have been helpful, please send them our way, because that is a conversation that we're trying to have. And I think that we'll continue to have for a while.
Denny, a couple things in that. One is most people think, I don't have to study the culture unless I go to a new place. And the reality is you can be in the same place, but it's very different than it was 5 years ago. And so we all ought to be exegeting the new culture in which we live, even if you've been in the same place. As you mentioned, you've been in Memphis 15 years. Memphis is a different place than it was even 5 years ago. And that culture, exegeting the culture as you're talking about, is so critical. And then secondly, I just wonder, is God up to something here of raising up a generation that does that, who learns how to do that, maybe even in the context of their own same place, but then could be mobilized to be a wave of global leaders that could go out to lots of different places, already having experience. Man, I know how to look into a culture. I've done that in a place before. So, man, I think what you're onto there is incredible. And I hope we're all following your example, following, the path you're setting there in terms of what we're learning, what we're thinking about, how we're developing. That is really, really good.
Well, I appreciate that. What I have seen, at least within campus outreach, is, and maybe it's just in my context, but there is kind of an old guard and a new guard taking place around us. There's kind of the old guard of folks who, the emphasis would just be on classic, like, vision values. I mean, which we need to be about vision values. Absolutely. I'm all about vision values. But maybe the form that it's taking place in needs to be checked in light of the current context. And there's kind of a new guard too of just context. Man, it's different now. You can't bring, the old stuff doesn't work anymore. And I just would say both need to be careful, and both have so much to learn I think the impetus for us has got to be keeping the vision and values at the forefront of what we're doing in a new context with new people. And every freshman class that comes in is a new opportunity for us to learn, to engage. But I think that the new young staff have a lot to offer. I think they have a lot to learn. And I think the same for us who have been on staff for a while. We can continue to lead out in the things that we know are helpful and true, but also we have a lot to learn about this new context.
It's great. Denny, you said earlier that we have been called to do an impossible work. And that's daunting to think about. What we're called to do is impossible, obviously, apart from the Lord's work in us. But when you think about the things that's going to require on our part, just in terms of perseverance and so forth, what are the things that come to your mind? What are the things that you're praying for your staff team? What are the things you feel like are going to be essential for CO staff to really be engaged and continue on in this impossible work as you described it?
I think the two things that come to mind, one is continually asking the question, what is God doing in me through these circumstances? Week by week, month by month, year by year, God's doing a work in us. And this thing does not turn around overnight. It takes time. So I think taking the time to prayerfully process what God is doing in me will be huge towards what we would call a building mentality. And by building mentality, what we mean is knowing that it's going to take years and years to see God move in a mighty way. And sometimes I can get impatient. I mean, if I'm honest, I can look at my summer project recruitment and be like, oh man, I'm just not cut out for this. This ain't for me, or man, they just need to go do something different. But then sometimes I show up and it's like the sky falls and all these people come out of nowhere. And what is God doing through all this? I think I have seen over time that it takes a long season of continually showing up and learning and growing as a leader and as a servant to be used by God. And that does not happen in a couple years. It takes consistency. And it also takes continuity. The consistency comes in year after year after year. The continuity comes in building 1 year off the next year, off the next year, off the next year. And I have found more often than not, man, God is doing a deep work in me. And then whenever it's good in his timing, I'll see it happen around me. But if you're going to do this on staff, and if you're going to see this thing turn around, or if you're going to see fruitful campus ministries, it's going to take a long time. When I came on staff, I thought it would probably just happen quick and God was going to use, there's my self-sufficiency. Oh man, I'm going to be used mightily like all these missionaries I've seen and like all these people in the scriptures. And then you go and you do it. I'm in Hebrews 11 right now, looking at these men of faith. And I just read Noah. I was just in Noah yesterday in Hebrews 11. And, I'm thinking Noah, he's building that ark in a year, 2 years, and he's off, the boat's floating out, And then I do a deeper study and I realize it took him 50, if not some scholars say 100 to 120 years to build this ark. And I thought, how do you endure 100 years, 50 years, whatever it was, of backlash from people, accusation, this ain't worth it. You go do something different. What are you, a fool? What kind of faith does it require for somebody to endure that kind of ridicule, and how countercultural to do something that he felt God was calling him to that nobody else was doing? Like, I feel that way sometimes. Am I the only one who's like, I want that kind of faith to believe that God can and God will in this context? And we have a theme that we say all the time here: He gonna do it. He gonna do it. And that's the thing that I would repeat over and over. He gonna do it. He gonna do it. Stay faithful, keep showing up, keep learning, keep growing, and watch him work. And so that's what I would say.
Denny, I'm so thankful, and I know so many people are so thankful for your leadership and for the influence you have, not just there in Memphis, but in your network and then globally around the movement of campus outreach. Just very, very grateful, and thanks for investing this time with us today. Just is a blessing to me and to so many. We love to close out these episodes with just to share a word of encouragement to the staff. That's what this podcast is for, is an encouragement to them, and then just to pray for the staff. So if you close us out doing those two things, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. And man, Kent, John, thank you guys for the way that y'all serve us. I hope you guys know this, but we're very grateful for the ministry and the work that comes out of CO Serve. And man, I do feel that the weight of being resourced and served in so many ways. And so thank you all. And thanks for doing this as well. My encouragement is that the staff are my heroes. They really are. I don't know that there's anybody else in the world willing to sign up for an impossible task. And I am so thankful for folks willing to live and die on the front lines. And they're so few. So I would just say, keep walking by faith, keep asking what the Lord is doing in you, keep giving yourself to knowing God, becoming like God, and making God known. And my hope is that the fresh bread cooking in the oven, the gospel good news would continue to compel you to keep showing up day after day. He really is worthy. So I'll close in prayer in light of these things. Father, what a privilege to be called children of yours, that even thinking about where we were when we were dead in our trespasses and sins, and yet in your great mercy, you made us alive in Christ. Oh God, what an incredible blessing to receive. Not only that, but that we'll reign with you in the heavens for all eternity. God, I pray that you would get the glory that you deserve, that the Lamb who was slain would receive the reward for his sufferings. And God, would you work mightily on these campuses, in these staff, and all of us. Continue to teach us your ways, that we might know you and love you, and that we might engage this next generation on the campus with the good news of the gospel, and that many laborers would be raised up for the harvest. Lord, let your good news of Jesus Christ compel us, capture us again today, that fresh bread really would be cooking in the oven of our hearts, and that you would get glory in all these things. In Jesus' name, amen.
We thank Denny Catalano for his time and his leadership. This season, we are capping our episodes to a shorter length per episode. But with so much amazing content from our guests, we want to make sure we don't miss anything. Because of that, we will be splitting some interviews into 2 episodes. We will make sure to include that in the title of each episode, Part 1 and Part 2, and we will publish both parts at the same time. So, if you just listened to Part 2 of our conversation with Denny before having heard Part 1, just jump back 1 episode on your podcast service and enjoy the first half of the conversation. Make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcasting service to get each new upcoming episode. The Campus Outreach Staffcast is a production of Campus Outreach Serve. The vision of Campus Outreach is to glorify God by building laborers on the campus for the lost world. To learn more, visit www.campusoutreach.org.